Hi, I'm Andrew Wasson. Thanks for joining me on my weekly guitar blog. It's April 29th, 2012. This time around, we're going to go out to Denver, Colorado, because Todd wrote in with this question here. He says, I recently jammed with a new band and their lead guitarist played such excellent solos, I was blown away. His notes seemed to connect directly into each chord of the moment. I asked him how he did that, and he said that he was just playing into the chord tones. Can you explain how I can begin doing this same idea? From Todd in Denver, Colorado. Well, thanks for writing in, Todd. You know, to jump into the world of playing into chord tones, you'll need to consider visualizing the chord shapes that lay inside of the scale that you would so happen to be using for playing that solo. What I mean is the scale that you're using will already contain the chord tones found within a backing chord. If the chord in some particular measure is, say, perhaps D minor, then its notes of D, F, and A are already inside of both the D minor pentatonic as well as the D natural minor scale. So to get a better idea of how this all operates, let's go to the guitar neck and look at all of this in a little bit more detail. I have three ideas that I'm going to cover in this example section, and they're all based around common chord shapes, large A minor, bar chord, and then a bar chord D minor, as well as a E major shape built off fifth string, much like the traditional C major chord just dragged out into the middle of the neck. And we're going to use those three chords to talk about three concepts that I think are kind of important. Now, the first one, which will be used around this A minor, is simply about staying inside the chord's shape, 100%, just using those notes and those notes alone. So really get to know what the overall geometry of your chord looks like, because that's going to be very important for something like this. And I'm going to give two examples here, but the first one is just going to be using notes directly, with some string skipping that are from the chord itself. So the guitar lick idea is going to go like this. Now the second example of that same guitar lick that I'd like to do is just going to spice things up a little bit with a couple of glissed tones off the first note and the last note of the lick. So here's the same lick again, but just with a glissed idea off of the first note and last note. Just to sort of prove the point that you can still keep things fairly simple, but at the same time spice them up a little bit with a little bit of ornamentation. Now in example number 2, we're going to move to the D minor. And with this particular chord, what we're going to do is try to add a little bit more variety around chord tone use through the choice of rhythmic ideas and some doubled up tones. So at this point, we're still not really thinking about branching away from the full scale or anything yet. I am just thinking about the tones that are coming from the chord itself, the geometry of the chord's shape. And we're just going to spice things up a bit. In this example, we're going to have a triplet, and then we're going to also do some doubled up tones. So here's example number 2. So the doubled up tones, along with some differences there in the rhythmic elements, and we have a quarter note at the end of the first measure we're landing on, and then we're sustaining that last note, the D note in particular there, for the rest of that remaining measure. So really punching the root of that particular chord, but you can of course land on any chord tone that you'd like. If you'd like to land on a third or a fifth, of course that's completely legitimate to do that. But let's move on next to example number 3, where we're going to take a little bit different direction, because in this one we're going to think more specifically about the scale around that E major. So now we're going to be worrying about scale tones more, and the overlay of how the chord would sit over top of that full scale. It doesn't have to be the full scale either. I mean, you could think about this by way of pentatonic, most certainly. But let's just get to the idea about what we're trying to do. We're trying to target mainly ending notes, how the phrase will push and wind up wrapping up upon a particular tone, which of course would hopefully be a chord tone. And in this case, we're going to look at the 5th degree of the E chord, the B note. And we're going to end there. So here's what the guitar lick I came up with sounds like. Okay, here it is again, a little slower. So if you apply all three of these ideas, really getting good at coming up with your guitar licks that are based entirely off of the shape of the chord itself, taking into consideration how you can spice them up with a little bit of changes to the rhythm, how you can use ornamentation, hammer-ons, pull-offs, slides, glist notes, all that stuff, doubled up tones as we discussed. So there's that one direction. And then the other direction is, of course, looking at the full scale and how all of those tones sit around that template of that chord shape. And then, of course, targeting into one of the chord tones from the shape itself to wrap up or end a phrase on, whether it's the root or whether it's the fifth or whether it's maybe even the major third of the chord. All those ideas work very effectively to target into chord tones with a system that's fairly easy to go and put into work. Now, because the chord tones of the background chord already hook up to the scale you'll be applying, it becomes important that you practice seeing the shape of the chord over top of the scale pattern. And this way you'll be able to easily target the specific tones that when you land upon them at the end of a phrase, say, they'll function in a very strong manner to wrap up a line and ultimately target that perfect note for the resolution of a melodic statement. All it takes is a little practice at seeing the overlay of the chord inside of the scale pattern. Anyway, once again, that's about all the time I have for today. As always, I hope these explanations have helped you. Thanks for watching. Have yourself a great week, and I'll catch up with you next time. Bye for now.